our record button. Beautiful. All right, so welcome everyone. And I'm just going to take a minute or two to go through a couple little announcements before we talk with our guest speaker for today. So a couple little things here. First of all, Donna Ray just got her TFA merch, and we definitely want to make sure that you all are able to as well. If you are interested, we have a bunch of really awesome things up for sale on the TFA website. You can access it tfapopup.com, which I'm throwing in the chat there. And also if you type in tinyurl.com/TFA merch, you'll be taken to our online store. You can get some really cool sweatshirts or t-shirts. We've even added a mug and some hoodies, different things like that, long sleeve shirts, some new things up there. So it's a really great products to have, and also it supports our production of the Young Curators Showcase, TFA Pop-Up, and all of our pop-up events to bring some young, new, and emerging artists into art spaces that they sometimes feel excluded from. So we're really excited to be bringing that together this year, and merch can definitely support that. I also want to encourage everyone, as I said, we're meeting here every single Sunday. So if you keep up with us on Instagram, make sure you're turning on post notifications or just keeping track of things, because we have new events every single week. In the chat there, I have our link tree. You can just type that into our web browser and you'll always have all of the Eventbrites to RSVP to, or just click the link in our bio on Instagram. We'll talk in a little bit about some events that we have for next week and the week after that to round out March. And then finally, we, as always, are giving away some free gifts to our attendees today. So make sure, if for whatever reason you did not sign up through Eventbrite, make sure I have your email. We're giving away a tech toolkit. So it's talking about a bunch of different websites and apps and platforms and things that can make your life just a little bit easier as an artist. So make sure I have your email so I can send that to you. And then finally, one last little announcement is, like I said, we're really gearing up for our Young Curator Showcase. This is a 5-day event in New York City in the beginning of June, and it's really designed to create a platform and create a space for young and emerging artists to network and connect with each other, and also find mentorship and job opportunities. So it's a really, really great event we have coming up. And if you're willing and able to support us with a donation, that will be really amazing to help with the production of this event and bring as many young artists together as we can. So that is all there. I want to just encourage everyone, please, if you have any questions as we move into our next portion of the call and talk with our guest speaker, please feel free to put those in the chat, any questions, comments, and also if you want to raise your hand, I will definitely call on you as well. We'd love if everyone is able to, unmute themselves and engage a little more directly if you're able. So without further ado, let me get to our next slide here. I am so excited to announce and introduce our featured speaker for today. We are joined by Trisha, who is the founder and CEO of the Artshine Foundation, which is a really amazing youth-led nonprofit. It's international. She's going to talk to us all about it in a couple minutes. She's also a student, an artist, and a poet. And a lot of her work revolves around empowering Gen Z artists in particular to use their work for positive change in the world. That's something that's very, very important to us at the Fearless Artists. As you might have seen, our whole focus is on mission-driven artists and artists that have a mission to do something great in the world with their art. So thank you so much for being here, Trisha. I'm going to just show a little slide about the Artshine Foundation, and I'd love to have you talk about the inspiration behind it and what you all do.
So first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's super great to be here today. And I really love the work that the Fearless Artist is doing. It's super cool. So the Artshine Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit I started 2 years ago when I was in high school. And basically, I had been involved in using art as a form of activism for my entire high school career. And it felt like I didn't really have a space to collaborate with other artists, and there just wasn't really a large community of Gen Z artists out there. And so I really wanted to create this. And that's kind of why I started my nonprofit in high school. And since then, we've grown to a team of over 50 Gen Z activists, and we've reached over 20,000 youth around the world. And right now, so I'm currently a freshman at Cornell, and I've continued my nonprofit work, and we're probably going to do some more projects this summer. But that's just a little bit about how ASF got started.
Awesome. And thank you, Trisha. I'd love to know, because you're using the word artivist. And for anyone that's not aware of that, do you want to explain what that means?
Absolutely. So artivists basically create artwork to raise awareness for different social causes. And yeah, it's a pretty simple term. It's just combining art and activism. And usually I tell people that, if you're an artist, there are so many avenues to get involved in the activism space through your artwork, just because there's such a range of issues that you can advocate for, from mental health to gender equality. It's really just so diverse and broad, and you can, do so many things with your artwork in whichever sphere you might want to go into.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd love to know, do you want to tell us about some of the projects that the Artshine Foundation has been working on? I encourage everyone, definitely check out their website. There's so many really awesome projects that are going on there. But if you want to just tell us about a couple of the things that you all have done since launching, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So when I launched, it was actually in the middle of COVID. So all of our initiatives were mostly virtual. So we ran our Black Lives Matter gallery and our mental health gallery. And we also did a national initiative where we were basically fundraising to provide PPE and art to seniors all across the country. And around that time, we also launched our feature program where we feature other artists. We also have a Discord community for artists to come together, and a podcast, and those are all things that we're continuing to grow. I would say that two of our largest initiatives, the first one was our magazine, which launched last year, and we were raising awareness for gender equality, and the entire magazine was dedicated to just advocating for women's rights and overall gender equity. And it was super cool because we had so many artists come together and submit their work. And the title of it is the Feminine Art magazine. If you search it up, you'll probably be able to find it. And it's also on our website. And then the summer before I came to college, I ran with my team a 3-day international conference called Activism, which was really kind of one of its kind because it combined STEM and art and activism into one holistic conference, and that hasn't really been done before, especially for the Gen Z crowd. So that was super cool, and we had a range of over 25 speakers. So it was a really incredible experience and a really awesome event. So those are some of our previous projects, and hopefully we can start doing some in-person galleries now. That would be super cool. I'm in New York now, so that's something I've been thinking about, maybe instituting a gallery in the state of New York or going back home and doing something there. But I have a really great team, and I don't think any of those initiatives would have been possible without them. So yeah, that's a bit about our past projects.
Awesome. I just want to make sure I get all these questions in the chat. Donna Ray is asking about whether like your virtual environment, the virtual space is still active and kind of what that looks like.
So yeah, in terms of the virtual environment, I would say that a lot of what we do is virtual just because I do have an international team. So, we can't meet up in person. And because of that, it's a lot easier for us to do our marketing through social media and kind of building our community through a virtual venue. And that's why we also did our galleries all virtual so far, just because it's really difficult with an international team to kind of organize in-person events. Just because when I started, I didn't build it with like a team of local friends that I knew or people from my area. So it gets a bit difficult to kind of do those in-person events. But yes, we are still very active on social media and we do run a lot of virtual events. Our feature program is entirely virtual, and we're going to start hosting virtual workshops in the near future. So definitely still very active. And then the conference was also a virtual conference, but it was international and we welcomed participants from all over the world. And then Gen Z, I think it's like from 12 or 13 to 19 years old. I think,
Yeah,
I think that's the age group.
Awesome. And I see Jihan saying virtual is definitely here to stay. I would 100% agree. But yes, Donna, so Gen Z is like one of the younger generations. It's mainly like teenagers and 20 somethings at this point. I know I'm 22 and I'm like a little on the cusp. I think it starts in like 1995 and later is when is that generation. So it's a bunch of young and new artists, specifically that Trisha and the Art Shine Foundation is supporting. I'm going to pull up some prompt questions that we have for you, Trisha, but while I'm doing that, just because, being like so young and especially like, and it's very similar to like a lot of other like young leaders as well. I'd love to know a little bit about the process for you about founding your nonprofit, building your team and things like that, especially with COVID and everything going on.
Sure. That's a really great question. And I think that it was initially very difficult just because I didn't know anyone else who was involved in Artivism. And so that's kind of scary when you don't see someone else even remotely being interested in the thing that you're trying to start. But I didn't want to let that prohibit me from forming a team and creating an impact with the thing I was passionate about. I was actually, questioning it. I was like, is Artivism even legit? Like, people don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm going to be taken seriously. And all of those fears like really culminated and almost stopped me from even trying to launch this nonprofit and building that team. But something I realized was that, you know, that's the only way that you can make change is by starting things that aren't there already, by creating those communities which you're not already seeing exist. I think that's really the definition of change. And so realizing that really kind of pushed me forward, and made me start thinking about, ways I could build a team that didn't involve like local people I knew or people in my school. And that's when, it struck me that social media tools were the perfect way to do that, to branch out into Gen Z communities, really try to garner interest from a young crowd, and get other people interested in what I was doing, and kind of starting up from there is how I was able to build up my team. And I would say that as a young person, especially a young person of color, it's definitely difficult to be seen as someone in a leadership position. People don't take you seriously when you're first trying to start something. And I faced those challenges just throughout my entire nonprofit journey. And I would say I still face those challenges now, especially with, keeping a team there, keeping people's interest high in what you're doing, and having people, do that work for you. It's not really an easy thing to do. But at the end of the day, like, this is something that I know is valid, and creating an impact through art is really profound, and it does work. And, even if team members fall out, or even if I burn out for some time and, don't do some work for my nonprofit for a stretch of time, that does not mean that, I can't still continue making an impact, or I can't start another project like next year. I think it's just so flexible. And that's something that I really have had to come to terms with, and it hasn't been easy, but I've learned a lot through the whole process.
Mhm. That's awesome. Thank you, Trisha. I really, something that really stood out to me about what you were saying is about, if you don't see something that you want to see, starting that and just making it happen, creating that space is a really great way to create change. I really like that, how you put that, and it leads very well into our first question I have up on the screen here. So speaking about Gen Z specifically, with the Artshine Foundation focusing on artists in Generation Z, why is it important to you for young artists especially to use their work for good?
That's a great question. I would say that, so I actually gave a TED Talk in December, and I touched on this in that speech. And I think that what differentiates Gen Z from other age groups is that we're a very creative crowd, and we're really not afraid to put our voices out there. And the other thing is that, we're surrounded by some of the craziest social issues of our time. And I think that as young people, we really are the future, and we're the ones who can shape what's going to happen in the next few years. And I think that because our voices are so powerful and so important, it's imperative that we come together and use our work, regardless of what it is. It can be art, it can be in the STEM field, it can be in anything really, but really creating a social impact through what you're doing. And that's kind of why I was also drawn to Cornell, because their business school really emphasizes doing social good through business. And I feel like if that wasn't, something I was interested in, like if Cornell didn't push that, I probably wouldn't have applied. Because my entire goal is not only through my nonprofit, but any business I start later, or a career that I find myself in, that somewhere in there I'm creating an impact on the people around me. And I think that every young person should have that goal somewhere in their mind, regardless of what they're doing, because we need to work together to create change and solve these social issues. We can't just lay back and be like, yeah, it's fine. And that's why I really think that it's up to Gen Z to take that action and use their voices for change.
Mhm. That's awesome. Thank you. I totally agree with you. I see, like, specifically with like Gen Z, like our generation, I see so many people that like really care really deeply about making an impact, and thinking outside of themselves and to a broader audience, and seeing the ideas that need to that things that need to change. I'm seeing a question here in the chat about taking breaks and refreshing and things like that. So Donna Ray in the chat is asking what you do in break times, like when you need to kind of refresh before getting back into the activism zone.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a good question. I'm the type of person who takes on way too much, and then I just burn out, and I'm like, oh no, what do I do now? And so sometimes, I've kept going, and that just doesn't end well for me. And that's why, like, sometimes I really need to take a break. And that's kind of been happening to me here, just because Cornell is demanding. There's always so much going on. And in the midst of that, doing events, doing activism related stuff, leading my team, running projects, it's not easy. And so when I take breaks from that, I'm doing a lot of other stuff on the side. Like, I'm just concentrating on myself. Like, I am a really big fitness enthusiast, so going to the gym, taking more time just for my mental health, so that when I do get back into it, I can just go back with full force. And like reading about other nonprofits or seeing what other nonprofits are doing or speaking at events. I really like educating others on activism. And then obviously academics and just like clubs here at Cornell. So I would say that it's like a trade-off. So when I take a break from one thing, I'm usually like either if I'm burnt out, I'm going to be focusing on my mental health. And if I'm not burnt out and I just need like a break from whatever I'm doing, then I'm usually replacing it with something else or just prioritizing something else more like academics or clubs at college.
That's awesome. I think that it's reminding me of the Steamism conference last summer, and I think we talked about how I think there's this idea, especially among, at least in my experience, especially among youth activists, that activism itself is not just a full-time job, but a 24/7, 365 sort of thing. And that's a really harmful thing. And we need to, take moments for our self-care, like I'm seeing in the chat there as well. So thank you for answering that one. We can jump to our next question. So talking about as well, just kind of reaching an audience, one thing at the Fearless Artist we talk about is helping artists get their work seen, shared, and sold. And with the idea of getting it seen and shared, the Art Shine Foundation, you've reached thousands since you launched in 2020. So what would you say to a young artist or simply a new artist who wants to make an impact with their work, but doesn't really know how to reach a wider audience?
Sure. I get asked that question a lot, and I think that it starts with first determining where you want to make an impact and what you're most passionate about. So for me, I knew that art was something that I really enjoyed. And I've always been a really artistic person. And then I started thinking of, like where do I want to make an impact? How do I want to make an impact? And I realized that, as much as I am an artist, I'm also an activist. Like all of high school, I was a huge feminist. I did a lot of work in the gender equality space, and also mental health and climate change. And I would say that those are like my three biggest areas of activism still. And that's when, I started using my art to raise awareness for those issues. And then it occurred to me that, you can really like do bigger things with this. That's when I launched the nonprofit and started building a team from there. But the bottom line is, find something that you're really interested in and determine ways that you can pivot and kind of leverage what you're interested in order to create the impact in the field that you're interested in. And then I feel like once you make that connection, then you can go about, starting a nonprofit or starting an initiative or a project even is totally fine, and you can scale up from there. And then I think the second most important thing is building a team, or at least having a couple of people around you who are also passionate about the same cause. I found that it's very difficult to create change alone, and being able to bring that community together of people who are also just as excited about what you're doing, and then working together to create change it can be a lot more powerful. So reaching out into communities, it can be local, it can be people that you know at your school. You can go online and try to create an Instagram presence and network with people from there, which it sounds easy to say, and it's obviously a lot harder to execute. But I would say that those are the two biggest things. Find what you're interested in and how you can leverage that to create change. And secondly, find people who are just as passionate as you about the cause and work together with a team to create the change that you're envisioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Thank you, Trisha. I definitely see a lot of, especially like with young artists and young activists, this need for like connection with others and networking and just working together. And I see something that makes me really happy is seeing a lot of folks in all generations, but especially in Gen Z, that work really hard to share one another's work and promote each other and just like move things forward and work together in that way. So that's awesome. Thank you. I have another question here for you. So kind of thinking into the future, and this, there's no right or wrong answer to this because it's something, we'll have to see. But I'm curious how you see or where you see mission-driven art going in the future. Like, what do you think it's going to look like? And as a follow-up to that, how will we primarily find or engage with these projects? Like, will it be public art all over social media, in the digital space, in galleries? Just what do you think that's going to look like?
This is a super interesting question. And I would say just right off the bat, I see things going more digital. I feel like everyone's just going online now. News and just like every source of media is mostly online. And so I would say that I see art really blending with the technology space more in the future. And I've seen this with a lot of exhibits and things where people are really trying to engage digitally with art, and I feel like it's easier that way to kind of get your ideas across because everyone has access to a phone or a computer. So if you have online galleries, you just click onto a website and you're able to view it. So I think that's really powerful, and I think, as you mentioned, social media definitely, I think, is going to be one of the main kind of ways that artists get their work out there. And it already is such a huge thing. If artists have, big social media presences and a huge following, there's so many people being impacted by their work every time they post. And then in terms of public art, I think that there will be an increase in public art as well, but probably like digital exhibits. There was one gallery that happened like I think 2 years ago, and they basically projected a huge like image onto a building, so that just a bunch of people could see it, and it was raising awareness for marine life or something like that. So I can see, you can see how that would make an impact on people, because just as you're walking, you look to the side and you see this huge like mural on a building. You're like, wow, that's super cool. So yeah, I think I just see it going a lot more digital. And I feel like art museums might start losing their popularity a little bit just because you have to actually go there in person, and it's expensive to curate and uphold. But yeah, that's kind of the shift that I think is going to happen, just based on like trends that I'm seeing right now.
Awesome, thank you. So I know Trisha's going to have to head out in a couple minutes, so I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions for her, please throw those in the chat. And while we're doing that, also feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself as well. But I want to ask, just to make sure we get that in time, how can folks on this call, or anyone in all of our networks, how can we support your work with the Art Shine Foundation and help you empower more Gen Z artists?
Sure. So we have a pretty big social media following, so feel free to follow us at Art Shine Foundation on Instagram. And then I think Maggie also put up our website, and we'll be pushing out more events probably next month and this summer. Right now, I've been kind of like inactive with nonprofit work just because I'm so busy with college stuff. But we do post a lot of cool content and original artwork, so definitely follow us on Instagram. I think that's the best way to keep in touch with the work we're doing.
Awesome, thank you. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask those. And I'll give you a couple seconds to do that.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. How you doing? Just my question is, like you have such a healthy perspective on things. It's really and it's amazing and refreshing to hear how well you prioritize, understand that sustainability for working on all of these things is the key thing. And I really loved how you said that if some things just take longer, and it's okay to come back to things, and to be aware about burnout for such a person, your young age. I think that's such a great example for even, anyone of any age to see your approach of that. So I want to just ask about maybe where'd you learn that? Like what are your support systems as far as, around you that help keep you, your resources in that area? How did you develop such a positive mindset around these things?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much. That means a lot. And I would say that it just kind of developed over time. And it's really hard to think that way, especially when you're in such a controversial space, because there's constantly people around you either misjudging your work or just questioning your ability to lead or put out projects. And so kind of spearheading things in that sort of a space is not easy, but I think it also helps you develop resilience. And I would say that over time, obviously I've been questioned sometimes for my work or the projects we put out there, because we are raising awareness for controversial issues sometimes, and we face backlash for that. But being able to see the positive difference that we're able to make through that is kind of what drives me forward. Like, why should you let the hate get to you when there are so many people out there appreciating your work, who want to listen to your experiences, want to learn from you? I feel like looking at that end of the spectrum is a lot more helpful. It's so beneficial for you because it helps you eliminate the hate that you might be getting otherwise. So I would say that's a huge part of it, just focusing on the right things. And I would say that also team building has been really helpful to me, just because I'm able to tap into the expertise of others. And people on my team look up to me and they're like, I see that you're really passionate about this cause. You've kind of inspired me to also look at this in a new way, and appreciate it a lot. So I think just being able to see that impact, and even just like a few kind words really drive me forward. Just very simple things like people thanking me for having their art featured in our galleries. Those are things that I focus on. I just don't really pay attention to kind of the negative feedback that I might be getting for what I'm doing. But yeah, that's kind of how I go about looking at it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Really amazing talk.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trisha. I know you have just like a couple of seconds left, so I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Everyone else still on the call, we're going to talk about some more stuff with Activism and community engagement and things like that. But everyone, please in the chat or give a round of applause and reactions for Trisha. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll definitely make sure everyone heads over to Instagram to follow the Artshine Foundation and engage with your work more.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maggie. Thanks so much for having me. And I wish you all the best with TFA. You guys are doing some really awesome work. And I would love to collaborate in the future also. So let me know.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Trisha.